Hey everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. So today we continue with our specialty week from the UK, all lifestyle medicine professionals. And today I'd like to introduce you to a wonderful registered dietitian named Lisa Simon. Please welcome her to the show. It's very nice to meet you.
Oh, hi, Chef AJ. Thanks for having me. It's lovely to be here.
Oh, it's so great. So before you tell us your story, which is great, because this is a subject that a lot of people are interested in, fertility, I'd first like to know, how did you first discover lifestyle medicine, a plant-based diet, and when did you transition to one?
So it was actually during my fertility journey that I discovered plant-based nutrition. So I'd experienced infertility for, well over a decade. And I somehow managed to conceive my eldest son, who's now 12. But when my husband and I tried to give him a sibling, we really struggled and it just wasn't happening. So we ended up going through IVF treatment. And it was during that time that I stumbled across plant-based nutrition, because as anyone who's going through treatment will tell you, you want anything, you want to try anything that you think will help. And when I first kind of stumbled across it, I was quite skeptical and thought it was just one of those, quack things out there. But when I actually started looking into the science and looking deeper into it, I realized there was really something in plant-based nutrition. So the giving up of meat and fish to me wasn't a problem, but I really struggled with the dairy side of things because I loved my chocolate and I ate a lot of cheese and, things like that. But it wasn't until my son, so the first round was successful, which was incredible. But it wasn't until my son was 6 weeks old and diagnosed with cow's milk protein allergy that I gave up dairy overnight because I was breastfeeding him. And he's remained a vegan ever since as well, which is fantastic. And I've been plant-based ever since. So 3 years or just over 3 years now. And I found that within a couple of months of being fully plant-based, my menstrual cycle returned to a 28 to 30 day cycle, whereas before it was absent or pretty much absent for a decade. So for me, I mean, that was the best outcome that could have happened.
Well, that is fantastic. I almost feel like you should write a book about it because, I know a lot of people that struggle with or have struggled with fertility and their doctor never even mentions diet.
Well, funnily enough, I am writing a book. I've just signed a contract.
Oh, that's fantastic. See, well, you don't need me to tell you that, but people need to hear this story and doctors need to be aware that this is another tool in their tool belt, because I think it's overlooked a lot in medicine.
Yeah. Absolutely. And when I was going through fertility treatment, the clinic were absolutely fantastic. They were so supportive and amazing, but diet and lifestyle really wasn't touched upon. It was very much the medical side of things. Mm-hmm. So there's so much that can be done in it. Optimizing your diet and lifestyle can't guarantee that you'll be pregnant. And, I'd never give false hope like that to anyone. And I make that very clear, but it can certainly help to optimize your chances of conceiving, and anything you can do to help that is worth it.
Absolutely, it's certainly worth a shot, and it doesn't cost anything. And you're a registered dietitian, so I'm guessing you didn't learn any of this in dietetics school about fertility and nutrition.
No. Well, plant-based nutrition in general. That's why I was so skeptical when I first came across it, because we'd always been taught that dairy and meat and fish and animal products were important parts of the diet to get the nutrients that you need.
We got to, we don't just have to change the medical model, we have to change dietitian school too.
Yeah, and it's definitely getting there. There are now modules on plant-based nutrition, and the British Dietetic Association have brought out their One Blue Dot policy, which focuses on sustainable diets and lifestyle choices. So it's definitely moving forward.
What's interesting is that you had trouble giving up dairy when it was for you, but when it was for your son, I hear this from even women that smoke or drink alcohol, they can't quit, but when they're pregnant, they somehow manage. Why do you think that is? That's so interesting.
It is really interesting, isn't it? I guess as a mum, you would do anything for your child and to help them, because he was so poorly for those 6 weeks. He couldn't go to the toilet. He was so constipated. I'd have to literally massage his stool out of him and I was still massaging him as he was trying to open his bowels, and he was just lethargic and just, you know, not right. And the difference in him when he stopped having the dairy was incredible.
And how
old
was he at the time?
6 weeks old.
So he's practically a lifelong vegan.
Yeah, and he's absolutely thriving.
And how old is he now?
He's 3. He was 3 in August.
Well, that is just really amazing. Why do you think dairy had such a pull on you? Because you said it wasn't hard to give up the meat or the fish, but because I hear that a lot, that dairy is the one thing that people just can't seem to let go of.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think there's just something quite. It's not addictive in the sense that it's not been shown to have any addictive qualities, but I think it can be addictive in other ways. So cheese is full of fat, so it has a nice mouth feel, and cheese toasties and chocolate, and I don't think people realize what amazing non-dairy cheeses are out there. They tend to think that you're restricted to those horrible plastic coconut oil based cheeses you can buy in the supermarket, and they don't realize how many amazing vegan chocolates are out there as well. And the choice is just growing by the day. So I think if people were more aware and what was out there and how to replace the dairy with great substitutes, then it wouldn't be so difficult.
Did you struggle at all when you finally decided to give it up? Because I heard from Dr. Barnard that there's these substances in dairy, casomorphines, that almost create like an opiate-like effect in our brains.
Yeah, I don't think that's backed up by particularly strong evidence, but I mean, I didn't struggle at all, and I thought I would. I thought I'd really miss the cheese and the chocolate, but I didn't. And I think because I had that extra incentive with my son, it was absolutely fine.
Did you have any fertility issues with your first pregnancy?
No, but it was really interesting actually, because I've always thought, why did I manage to conceive so quickly with my eldest? And looking back, I was actually following a predominantly plant-based diet at the time. I just forgot about it, and I was eating far less meat and fish, and I was eating pretty much avocados every day, lots of leafy greens at the time. So I think it was purely down to the fact that I was eating a mainly plant-based diet.
Where did you first hear of the plant-based diet?
Oh, I can't actually remember where I first heard about it, but I ended up doing a course pretty early on that Dr. Shireen Kassam runs with Winchester University, and it really opened my eyes to the plant-based world, and it was all evidence-based, and it was it's an incredible course, and I really recommend it to anyone who wants to learn more about plant-based nutrition.
Why do you think that animal products are so damaging to fertility?
There are lots of reasons. With the animal protein itself, we have lots of data to show that women who have higher intakes of animal protein have higher rates of infertility, of ovulatory infertility. There's also heme iron in animal products, and heme iron is a pro-oxidant, which means that it can cause damage to your cells and the DNA in your cells. And we also have data showing that women who have higher intakes of heme iron have higher rates of infertility as well. And the same goes for men. And our bodies are very clever at regulating the iron we have in plants, so the non-heme iron. So if our stores are plentiful, then we don't absorb as much. But if our stores aren't that great, we absorb more. Whereas with the iron in animal products, the heme iron, we absorb it too much. And because it's because it's a pro-oxidant and can cause damage, our bodies aren't very good at excreting it. So if we have absorbed too much, it's kind of there to stay, and that's not a good thing. There's also substances in animal products called AGEs, or advanced glycation end products, and we have receptors for those throughout our bodies and in our reproductive tract, so both men and women, and they can cause this inflammatory process in the body. And if they accumulate around the ovarian follicles, they can cause early ovarian aging. If they accumulate around the womb, they can actually prevent the egg from implanting the embryo, because it can cause that inflammation. And it can also negatively affect the sperm and the quality of the sperm as well. And of course, they're full of saturated fat as well, most animal products. And saturated fats and trans fats negatively affect the fertility as well. And it's the polyunsaturated, the monounsaturated that have the best outcomes on fertility.
That's so interesting that it can actually affect the quality of the sperm. So I guess the next question is, did your husband go plant-based at the same time?
He's a bit more tricky to convince. He's a lot better than he was. He was very much a carnivore a few years back, but I'd say now he's probably about 80% plant-based. And he's noticed some benefits in himself as well. But I think generally men do find it harder to give up the meat. And it's, you know, with him, he relies a lot on the meat substitutes, but I'd rather him have that than the animal products.
Wow. Well, if animal products are detrimental to fertility, how are plants helpful?
Plants are helpful in so many ways. They're packed with nutrients that are really important for fertility. They're full of fiber, which is also really important for fertility, and not just for fertility, for your gut health as well. And if you're eating lots of different types of fiber, so diversity is key. So having plenty of whole grains and fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds, all the plant foods contain fiber. So as many different types as you can. And kind of the magic occurs in the digestion process of fiber. So it passes unchanged through your body until it meets your colon, so your large intestine. And the bacteria in your colon are needed to break down that fiber. And when the fiber is broken down, the bacteria produce these short chain fatty acids. So there are three main ones. There's butyrate, propionate, and acetate. And the more of these you have in your gut, the healthier your gut environment will be, because they can increase the acidity in your colon, which means that inflammatory bacteria are less likely to grow, and especially the more dangerous forms of inflammatory bacteria like E. coli and salmonella. So the more good bacteria you have, the more anti-inflammatory your gut will become. And of course, 70% of our immune system is in our gut as well. So you can really help support your immune system by eating plenty of fiber. And it's really important for hormonal control. So it helps balance the hormones in your body, because they combine with the fiber in your gut, and then you'll remove them in your stool. So particularly for women with hormone-driven conditions like polycystic ovaries and endometriosis, the more fiber you eat, the better. And you can only find that in plants.
Yeah. How did they figure out that your son had a dairy allergy?
He was referred to the hospital in the pediatric team. He had a skin prick test.
So that's was he showing some symptoms though beforehand, just constipation or?
Yeah. I just knew he wasn't right, and he was crying after every feed, and I just knew, mother's instinct. And it was deemed to be quite a mild allergy, but for me the symptoms.
I wonder how many kids are, because I'm allergic to dairy, but it didn't get diagnosed till adults. So I was still force fed it. And I wonder how many kids really are allergic or have an intolerance to it, and they just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, intolerance to the lactose in the dairy is really, really common. And we all have a post-weaning fall in the lactase, which is the enzyme we need to digest the lactose. And it affects about 70% of the global population. So, huge numbers of people.
Well, there's still a belief among many pediatricians that children must have dairy. Is that the same in the UK as it is in the US?
Yeah, I did find that with my son. Personally, the pediatrician was not very supportive of the fact that he was on a plant-based diet, and really encouraged me to reintroduce the dairy. And actually we did when he was 10 months old for a short time, because we were told that there was a risk if we didn't, that the allergy could get worse. And obviously we wouldn't want to risk him having an anaphylactic reaction in the future. So we tried to reintroduce it, didn't work. The symptoms came back. He was not right again, and that was that. Then we didn't try again.
I think his body just had infinite wisdom, because I don't think the growth fluid from another species is food for us.
No, and we don't need dairy in the diets. For the vast majority of people, we can get all of the nutrients that are in the dairy from plant foods. Especially calcium, and calcium from the majority of the leafy greens has been shown to be absorbed better than dairy anyway. So there are plenty of other sources of calcium and vitamin D and B12 and iodine and all the nutrients that are in dairy. You can achieve them on a plant-based diet and some supplements as well.
Absolutely. Is your older child also plant-based? Because he was a little bit older when this.
Yeah, unfortunately not. He would struggle. I mean, he eats plant-based at home, but when he's out and about, he'll have pizza or things with his friends.
Oh, well, good. At least everybody at home is on the same page, because then the younger one doesn't have to feel different. If anything, he should feel special.
He should. He is.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if it wasn't for him, you might not have made this change, and now you can help so many people.
No, that's absolutely true.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You mentioned PCOS, and just in case some of our viewers aren't familiar with that term, polycystic ovarian syndrome, what is it and how does that affect fertility? And can diet actually help people with PCOS to possibly conceive?
Yeah, it can absolutely help. It's a hormone-driven condition, and it's the most common cause of infertility in women of childbearing age. So the most important things to do when you have PCOS is to have plenty of fiber, because as I said, that can help regulate the hormones, and also prevent those spikes in insulin and blood glucose levels, which can make PCOS much harder to manage, because a large number of women with PCOS are insulin resistant, which means that their insulin isn't working properly to lower the blood glucose levels. So that can, and insulin drives the formation of those ages as well. And women with PCOS have higher circulating levels of ages in their bodies. So plenty of fiber, plenty of colourful fruits and vegetables, and vitamin D is really important as well. For the general population in the winter time, but for women with PCOS as well. So making sure that in the summer you're having good, sun exposure. So 10 minutes a day without sun cream is enough to start making that vitamin D. Also, you can get it from sunbathing mushrooms in the summer, but making sure that you're leaving your windows open, because the UVB rays can't penetrate the glass. And then in the winter, making sure you're taking a supplement daily. So from now through to the end of March in the UK.
Nice, great. Well, so when is the best time for someone with fertility issues to think about diet? I'm guessing it's before they even conceive.
Yeah, so ideally a minimum of 3 months before they want to conceive, because it takes roughly that amount of time for the egg to mature and the sperm to develop. But some people might need longer, depending on their diet quality. If, for example, they're very underweight as well, or if they're obese and they're trying to reach a healthier body weight, then it might take 6 months, possibly longer, for their bodies to be in the optimum health, but definitely a minimum of 3 months.
Great. That is wonderful. You created some kind of a cheat sheet for fertility.
A cheat sheet?
Yeah, didn't you? I thought you created a fact. Oh, not a cheat sheet.
A fact sheet.
It's like a cheat sheet. I don't know why I called it a cheat sheet, but you wrote a fertility fact sheet.
Yeah, so that's on plantbasedhealthprofessionals.com. So you can go on there and find the fact sheet on there. And I've also written a clinical update for the British Dietetic Association. So if you just Google Lisa Simon, BDA fertility, then that will come up as well.
Well, we can definitely put those in the show notes. How did you get involved with the UK health professionals?
So I can't remember what order it was in, but after I did the course, or possibly before I did the course, I became a member of Plant-Based Health Professionals. And it's a fantastic group to be a member of, because there are loads of free resources and fact sheets on there, and they do webinars as well. And it's a really lovely community to get support when you're on a plant-based diet, and access to lots of health professionals as well.
Do you work with people in person, online? How do you help people these days?
So I work for Plant-Based Health Online. So we started in January this year. So we're a relatively new company. We're CQC registered, and we see all patients virtually. So you can either book in for, we offer free 10-minute inquiry calls, so people can speak to me and see if I can help them, or you can book straight in for appointments. And we've just started doing group consultations as well, which is really exciting.
And must somebody live in the UK to benefit from your experience, or can you do consultations other places?
Yeah, so I can see patients from abroad, but unfortunately not America or Canada, which is a shame. But anywhere else in the world, then
wow, why are we excluded?
I know. I know. Unfortunately, my insurance just doesn't cover America and Canada.
Oh boy. Well, hopefully people can glean some of your expertise from this interview. A lot of times when women get pregnant, the OBGYN tells them to take prenatal vitamins. And I'm wondering, are there some particular nutrients that are especially important during that period that maybe they could get from eating the food instead of taking the prenatal vitamin? Because a lot of times it has folic acid, and I've heard Dr. Furman say you don't want to be taking that as an isolated nutrient.
Oh, well, no, I would disagree with that. I would say folic acid is really important when you're trying to conceive, because not only is it important for the fertility, because it's involved in the whole ovulation process. It's obviously needed to reduce the risk of neural tube defects in young, in the first trimester of pregnancy as well. But folate is really important in the diet too. So as well as taking the folic acid supplements, I always say make sure you're having plenty of folate in the diet, and that includes men, because it's needed to synthesize the DNA in the sperm as well. It's amazing how many nutrients are involved in improving the egg and sperm quality. So plenty of leafy veg and fortified foods and oranges. Also, zinc is really important, and I always say try and get that from the diet rather than taking a zinc supplement. So zinc is important because low levels have been linked to lower serum testosterone in men. And again, it's needed for the whole ovulation process. And with zinc, men lose zinc in each ejaculate. So if you're trying for a baby, you're potentially going to lose quite a lot of zinc. So making sure you're having plenty of zinc-containing foods. So the whole grains and seeds are a great source. So sprinkling seeds on your breakfast or adding them to your smoothie, having a good portion, 30-gram portion every day. And with the supplements, the only ones really that I think, that I say are really important when you're plant-based, especially, is B12. So making sure you're taking a daily B12 supplement, because lower levels, again, have been linked to subfertility and poorer sperm quality. And also, for general health, B12 is important. Vitamin D and iodine. So iodine is another essential nutrient. It's actually classed as a key nutrient for the first 1,000 days of life as well. So from conception until just before the child's second birthday. So you can't really get sufficient iodine unless you're having daily seaweed sources. And you have to be careful with seaweed as well, because it can contain too much.
Wow. Well, so why is it important to get the men involved in the fertility conversation?
It's so important to get the men involved, because I think often the focus is very much on the woman, because the woman is the one who carries the baby. But we forget that the men, they contribute 50% to making the baby. And infertility rates in men are rising. So they're now thought to account for 50% of couples infertility. And for about 40% of those due to diet and lifestyle factors. So it's so important to show men that there is so much that they can do as well to try and optimize their fertility and help their partner as well. And I think men are very reluctant to talk about it. They get embarrassed, or they may feel that their masculinity is threatened somehow, by struggling to conceive. And I'm really passionate about getting that conversation going. And especially, erectile dysfunction can be a cause of failure to conceive. And again, that is increasing. And although we don't have the data showing that plant-based diets can help with erectile dysfunction, theoretically we can say it does, because cardiovascular disease is often an underlying cause, and we know that plant-based diets can help reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease and also help manage it. And by improving the blood flow, it doesn't just go to your heart and your brain, it goes to all of your organs, and your sexual organs are included in that. So, you know, again, that's all of those reasons why it's really important to get the men.
Absolutely. I don't know if you saw Forks Over Knives, but my favorite part was when the urologist, Dr. Terry Mason, talked about erectile function being the canary in the coal mine. And and he said, if you have cardiovascular disease anywhere, you have cardiovascular disease everywhere. So that's a good reason for men to consider a plant-based diet, isn't it?
Exactly. And leafy greens are an amazing source of nitrates, and nitrates can help dilate those blood vessels and get the blood flowing directly to those organs. So definitely an incentive for plant-based diets. Yes. That's
why they say kale is the new Viagra.
Absolutely.
So when you changed your diet, did you literally change it overnight? Like what were you eating before? Like, did it happen that quickly? You found out your son had this dairy allergy. You knew you couldn't have dairy anymore because you were breastfeeding. And did you just stop eating dairy, or, you know, was there a transitional period?
For me, no, but I'm probably quite unusual, because for most people it doesn't just happen overnight. It can take some time to transition, but I've always kind of been an all or nothing type of person. So for me, it wasn't that much of a challenge, but I think it was also easier because I'm a dietitian and because I knew more, you know, what I was doing and what I needed to be aware of and the nutrients I needed to be aware of. So for most people, it is more of a gradual process, and that's absolutely fine. You know, sometimes gradual change means sustainable change.
Right. Are you somebody that likes to cook or enjoys cooking? And did that have to change a little bit when you transitioned?
I love cooking. I really love cooking. One of the things I found about the transition was how much more exciting cooking is when you're cooking plant-based, because I think, like most people, or like a lot of people, my diet used to be quite boring. It used to be, you know, meat and veg and potatoes, or some kind of variety on that. But now I eat so many different types of foods, and it's just a really enjoyable process. And with plant foods, you can pretty much stick everything, or stick anything even, in a dish, and it just works. I've never cooked a kind of a meal that's really flopped. So I think that's an added bonus.
Yeah, you never cooked anything that flopped. Wow.
No, but then, I mean, obviously you can. My husband might actually contradict that.
What kind of meals do you make for your family? Like, I love to, you know, because people ask any guests that I have on the show, even my stand-up comedy teacher who was a guest, what do you eat? So like, what do you eat in a day, and what kind of things are you feeding your family?
So breakfast is normally overnight oats or porridge. So I always, because we're a busy family, I always make a massive bowl of overnight oats, which lasts about 4 or 5 days. And then we just all dig in and have whatever, you know, portion we want, and then just throw in the fruit and the yogurt in the morning. I do a lot of tofu based dishes. So one of our favorites is a 1-pot tofu rice dish, where you just literally throw everything in the pot, cover it in stock, cook it for 20 minutes, and it's done. And it's, you know, it's full of nutrients, and tofu is a huge hit in the family. We do kind of lentil based spaghetti bolognese. I cook a lot of soup as well in the winter, so we love butternut squash and sweet potato soup, with pumpkin seeds on top for some crunch. That always goes down well. Lots of different things. And again, like I said, my husband and my eldest son like the meat substitutes, so we can have plant-based burgers, or you know, the sausages in a pasta dish, or something like that.
Nice. What's your favorite meal? And what's your family's favorite meal?
Oh gosh, that's a really hard question to answer. I'm not sure. I don't think I have a favorite meal. I think I just love all plant-based food. I think mine and my husband's tastes are very different, because he's not so much of a fan of the whole food approach. So whereas I would absolutely love chickpea and sweet potato curry, that probably would be on the lower list of his of his favourites. So he'd prefer something like a plant-based burger or something like that.
Right. Is we have a obesity epidemic in the United States. Are you seeing that in the UK as well? And especially, I'm curious, among children?
Yeah. Unfortunately, it is rising. And again, it can affect your fertility as well, being overweight. But it seems to affect men and women differently, which is really interesting. So with women, a recent studies found that the ideal BMI is between 20 and 23, whereas with men, it's between 22 and 27. So in the slightly overweight category. And they found that the best combination for fertility outcomes is when the woman has a healthy BMI, so between 20 and 23, which is slightly less than the range that we normally have for a healthy BMI, but the man is slightly overweight. And the worst combination is if the man is underweight and the woman is obese. So weight does tend to affect women more, and we're not quite sure why, but one of the suggestions is that women only have one egg, whereas men have millions of sperm. So the women's egg is more likely to be affected by the changes.
Does being either overweight or underweight affect fertility in some people?
Yeah, so underweight, if a woman is underweight, then it can affect her menstrual cycle, which obviously would affect fertility. And she might be nutrient compromised, so she might have deficiencies in certain nutrients that are also really important for fertility. So it's really important not just to talk about women being overweight, but to focus on women being underweight as well, and to try and achieve that healthy weight before you actually try to conceive.
Are there any other factors in fertility that women and men should look at other than just diet?
There are so many factors, and again, that ties into lifestyle medicine. So we look at the 6 pillars. So nutrition is just one piece of the puzzle, really. You're looking at stress and sleep and physical activity, avoiding toxic substances. So looking at alcohol and caffeine and microplastics and plastics like BPA. There are so many different things, and also making sure you have supportive relationships, because the fertility journey is really difficult, and if you're not really supportive of each other, it can really affect your relationship. And if you're going through IVF or fertility treatment, I know that my hormones were all over the place, and I really needed my husband there to support me and to just make me a cup of tea if I felt emotional, and to help me through that. So that's really important. And I think people underestimate stress, the effect that stress has on the body. And I always share the techniques that I found really helpful when I was going through IVF, and stress management, anything you can do to bring down your stress levels, because if you're stressed, then you can lose your libido, which obviously isn't desirable if you're trying to conceive. It can affect your sleep, and then the less sleep you have, the more stressed you are, the more you can reach for foods that are high in sugar or saturated fat just to get that energy. So it's all very, very closely linked. So addressing all of those factors is really, really important.
What about exercise? Does that play a role in fertility at all, whether a woman exercises too much, too little?
Yeah, so it's moderate exercise that we recommend, because if you don't move your body enough, then that's not going to be beneficial for your general health as well as your fertility. But then if you over exercise, you're releasing cortisol, stress hormones, and that can be counterproductive as well. So I always advise my patients, if they're doing excessive exercise, so if they're doing a lot of running and a lot of strength training every single week, then just trying to bring that down a little bit to moderate levels, and that's the best way.
Great. I don't know how popular this is in the UK, but in the United States, low carb diets are that when people want to lose weight, or even maybe sometimes reverse diabetes, that's what their doctors are telling them: keto, paleo. And I'm just wondering, is that the same in the UK, and how would that affect fertility?
Yeah, unfortunately, some fertility clinics are still recommending low carbohydrate diets to patients, and especially women with PCOS. as well. And actually, it's the worst thing you can do for your fertility, because as we've already discussed, the fiber is super important. So if you're taking out carbohydrates, then you're removing most of the fiber in your diet as well. And it's not just the lack of fiber, it's, carbohydrates are your preferred energy source, your body's preferred source, your brain's preferred source. So if you take them out of your diet, you're going to become fatigued, you're going to have mood changes, you'll feel low, you might have trouble sleeping, you won't have any exercise tolerance either. But also, if you follow a low carb diet, what do you replace the carbohydrates with? And that tends to be animal protein. And as we've discussed, it's just not beneficial for fertility to do that. So I'd never ever advise low carbohydrate diets when you're trying to optimize your fertility.
Or even health. I'm not sure they're beneficial for anything, let alone
anything.
Yeah, absolutely. But are they popular in the UK though, like they are here?
They are, yes. Yeah, wow. Unfortunately.
Wow. What about processed food and fast food? Is that taken the UK by storm? Like in the United States, I read that Americans eat something like 92% of their calories from animal products and processed food. Something like 67% of calories are coming from processed food.
That's huge, isn't it? Yeah, and I don't know the figures here, but you only have to go into the supermarket to see how many processed foods are available out there. And unfortunately, it's happening in the vegan aisles as well. So just because you're vegan doesn't mean necessarily that you're following a healthy diet. So just to be aware that processed foods are full of, again, they can be full of saturated fats and sugar and salt. So to try and use whole foods where possible and cook from scratch, and to make sure that you're having as varied and healthy a diet as possible.
Are the people that are seeking out your services seeking them out specifically for fertility, or maybe they just are looking for help transitioning to a plant-based diet, or maybe both?
I see a wide variety of patients. So I do NHS work as well, and I'm a gastro specialist as well as fertility. So I see patients with IBS, inflammatory bowel disease, celiac disease, pancreatitis, liver disease, and also anyone trying to transition to a plant-based diet and just wanting help to make sure their diet's nutritionally complete. I see lots and lots of different types of patients.
Well, talk GI to me, because I host a summit annually called the GI Health Summit, and that is an area of great interest to me.
Oh, right. Yeah, I love gastroenterology. And I've just started doing my face-to-face clinics again in the NHS, which is brilliant, because I've been doing virtual clinics throughout the pandemic. So being able to see patients face-to-face is great, because I can weigh them, I can check their hand grip strength, I can see them, physically. And I actually ended up admitting one of my patients last week into hospital because I could see how unwell he was, and that wouldn't necessarily come through on the screen. So yeah, it's great that I'm seeing them face to face again.
Because so many people, I mean, even people following the plant-based or vegan diet have GI issues, and a lot of times their conventional GI doctor will say, well, stop eating fiber, and that can't be the answer, not at least certainly not long term.
No, and there's I don't know if you've heard it, but there's a low FODMAP diet that's very popular, and I'm not a huge fan of doing the whole low FODMAP diet, because it excludes so many different really beneficial foods. And the problem is that people are put on it by their doctors, and then they end up in the exclusion phase for 2 years sometimes. So they really damage their gut environment by not doing the reintroduction phase. And fiber's a funny one. Some people can't tolerate some types of fiber, and they've got to be really careful. And if you suddenly transition to a plant-based diet and you go too quickly and eat too much fiber, then you're going to get symptoms like bloating and gas and diarrhea and other problems. So it's not that you can't have the fiber, but you just need to go slowly. And I always say, try and increase your fiber intake by 1 portion every 3 or 4 days, rather than trying to do it too quickly. And of course, if you have inflammatory bowel disease and you're in flare-up, or if you're in flare-up of diverticulitis or something like that, then you have to follow a low-fiber diet until that flare-up is resolved, and then you start reintroducing it back in. So it's a very, special way of doing it, and it should always be under the guidance of a dietitian.
That's great. And it's wonderful that there are registered dietitians that specialize in GI health. I did not know that until doing the summit. And then all of them came to me wanting to be interviewed. And I'm like, this is fantastic, because I never knew that there was a specialty.
Yeah, there's a specialty in pretty much anything, any clinical condition in dietetics, which is amazing, because with gastro conditions and for example, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, diet is key. There's no medication to help treat non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And if you don't catch it in time, it progresses to cirrhosis. So, diet and lifestyle interventions are so important.
Right. They actually, I don't know if you're familiar, I could send it to you. PCRM did a study where they actually reversed fatty liver with the diet. That wasn't even what they were looking for, but it just happened to do that. So it's amazing what a plant-based diet can do. Get you a baby. Yeah, I always hear, like, I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Will B, but he always says, go low and slow, low and slow, especially like with the legumes. People seem to have a lot, not everyone, but a lot of people, it's the legume category that they really struggle with.
Yeah, and I was one of them. I struggled at first as well, but I'm absolutely fine now. And as long as you go really slowly, and you take other measures as well. So soaking, if you're using, dried legumes, then soaking them really well and cooking them really well, and starting off with 1 tablespoon sometimes, and gradually increasing, the quantity. Cooking with asafoetida as well. There's, the spice that can help with digestion, and adding other spices to your food as well. There's lots of different things you can try to improve the tolerance.
And I hear sometimes sprouting even can be helpful.
Yeah, I love sprouting.
Yeah, that's neat. I love that. You mentioned the NHS, but I'm not sure all the viewers are familiar with what that is.
Oh, so it's a National Health Service. So it's the free National Health Service we have in the UK. So I've worked in the NHS since I qualified in 2014. So I did my dietetic degree later on in life. So I started off with an English degree and pretty much didn't do anything with it. And then had a trip to Africa, worked in a school, started breakfast club there, saw the difference that nutrition made on the children's energy and their concentration and their exam results as well, and thought, I want to be a dietitian. So when I came back to the UK, that's what I did.
That's a great story. I love that, because that was going to be my next question. What made you want to become a dietitian? Are there other plant-based dietitians in the UK other than the ones involved with this week?
There are, yes. I know a few amazing plant-based dietitians, and they're members of plant-based health professionals as well. So it's lovely because we can support each other and have little CPD, so professional development sessions together, and it's really lovely.
That's great. Do you have any success stories from patients, particularly where fertility is concerned, where they actually got pregnant?
Yeah, I've had quite a few come through recently, and they're all patients I saw at the same time, so around December, January, and they've all come through now saying that either they're pregnant or their first round of IVF was successful, or telling me they've just given birth. And they've all credited the diet and lifestyle advice and interventions as part of the reason for their success. So it's amazing to hear. And I love getting those emails. It really does make my day.
That is very cool. Can you talk a little bit about the book you're writing? Is it going to be specifically on fertility or plant-based nutrition, or are you allowed to speak about it?
Yeah, so it's going to be on optimizing male and female fertility with plant-based diet. So it's really exciting. It's going to have a selection of my recipes in there as well, because I'm a massive fan of keeping things simple. So there's going to be no complicated recipes, no exotic ingredients, just things that you're likely to have in your cupboards and your fridge at home that you can make in 15 to 20 minutes. So perfect for busy lives as well.
Wow, that's fantastic. Because I was going to ask, are there going to be recipes for fertility? Do you use any of the tools that I like to use to make things easy, like the Instant Pot, the air fryer?
Yeah, so I don't have an air fryer. My mum has an air fryer and it's brilliant. You can just throw everything in there, can't you? But just the one pot meals, loads of my meals are one pot meals. And I'm a huge fan of stir fries as well, because they take hardly any time at all. And, it's just full of colour on your plate. And as long as you're adding a nice protein source in there as well, so either using tofu or seeds or, anything that you can put in there to provide a bit more protein. But it's basically 15 to 20 minute meals, most of my meals.
Do you think, obviously you can't just say, hey, follow a plant-based diet, you'll get pregnant in 3 months, but for somebody for whom nutrition is going to work, how long do you think it would take, or does it depend on what dietary style they're coming from?
Yeah, it's very much an individual thing. So everyone is different, and what might work for someone might not work for someone else. And I do see a lot of people coming through who have been told by other people they've seen that this will definitely work, that they will get pregnant. And some of them can be quite jaded by the time they come through, because they've had their hopes raised and then dashed and then raised and then dashed. It's not a very nice thing to happen. So I'm always very transparent with my patients, but just encouraging them and saying, anything you can do to help to optimize your chances will help you.
Well, my feeling is though, like, even if somebody tried it and they didn't get pregnant, it's still going to improve their health, that it's still worth it. I hope that they would see that. And even if they continue to struggle with fertility, they realize the difference just in their health and well-being.
Yeah, completely. It improves so many, aspects of your health and reduces your risk of so many chronic diseases that it's, as you say, it's worth it for your general health.
I know you can't treat patients in the United States and Canada and North America, but you mentioned these webinars that you do. Can people pay to see those if they wanted to glean more of your expertise?
The webinars on plant-based health professionals. Yeah. So if you pay to become a member, and it's really cheap. I think it's, well, I don't want to say how much because unless I get, if I get it wrong, but it's really, really cheap. And then you have access to all of the webinars that they do. And they do a webinar every other week. And I've learned so much from them. And they are really, really good quality webinars.
Well, that sounds fantastic. And I'll definitely, because I know that Dr. Shireen is going to be on this week, and maybe she can talk about that, because that's something that I think people would be very interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure she would absolutely love to talk about that.
Yeah. Have you ever eaten at Dr. Tate's house? Because she's she's one of the professionals on this week, and boy, can she cook.
I know. No, I don't think we live near each other, because I live in Cardiff in Wales. So I don't think we're that close, but I'm hoping that soon we'll all, because we haven't met personally, we haven't met face to face, any of us, because of COVID. So I'm hoping that one day pretty soon we'll all be able to actually meet up and meet face to face.
Wow, that's great. Do you ever have patients coming to you and wanting to know if it's safe for their children to be on plant-based diets? Because that's, like we said earlier, a lot of pediatricians are forcing dairy on people, saying it's unsafe. And, they're saying that vegan nutrition may be adequate at other stages of life, but not for babies, toddlers, things like that. And Dr. Clapper wrote a book years ago on this, but it's still, people are still worried about it.
Yeah, well, I'm not allowed to see anyone under the age of 18 because I'm an adult dietitian, not pediatric. But I do have pregnant ladies coming to see me who are concerned that they can't have a healthy pregnancy on a plant-based diet. And the British Dietetic Association have actually said in a statement that plant-based diets are suitable for all ages, as long as they are well planned. So from preconception through to pregnancy, through to childhood, they're completely safe.
Right. That's the thing, that with all that's what I worry about, is because when I went vegan 44 years ago, there was no vegan junk food. When I say the worst, I'm not even sure how bad it was. I personally didn't eat it because you had to go all the way to Loma Linda, California to buy it, because it was sold like at the Adventist church. They had some kind of fake meat in a can made from Worthington. But other than that, there was nothing the vegan food was fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, nuts, and seeds. That's what was vegan food was in 1977. And of course you could get French fries and soda, but for the most part, there was no vegan junk food. And now, like you say, it's as prevalent as, non-vegan junk food. And that's what I worry about. And that's what I think a lot of times gives plant-based and vegan diets a bad reputation, because these are the foods that people are eating and promoting, and they're not going to promote health, at least not long-term, in my opinion.
No, and as I said, you go to the supermarket, you see just how many processed vegan foods there are. I think they can have their place. I mean, sometimes if you want to go out for dinner with your friends, or if you want to go around someone's house and they're not vegan themselves, then it can be an easy option for them to cook something like that for you. But the majority of your diet, so at least 80% of your diet, should come from whole foods for the optimum health benefits.
Yeah, I agree. Where do you take a hard line on certain foods like sugar, and especially because you're raising young children? Do you guys have Halloween in the UK?
We do.
You do? Same holiday? Because I know it's not a health food, but the question is like, do you feel like especially children need to abstain from it?
I have quite a balanced approach with added sugars, and I don't like them to have too many added sugars, because as a nation we have far too much of it, and it's everywhere. But they are children as well, and I don't want them to be different from their friends. So if their friends are having some chocolate or something like that, then I'm perfectly fine with them having their plant-based chocolates. Or if they want to go, my eldest loves to go trick-or-treating with his friends, and that's fine too. But I think the majority of the time they eat so well and so healthily. Like my 3-year-old absolutely adores porridge with blueberries and raspberries and chia seeds and soy milk, and most of his meals are like that. So I'm fine with him having the occasional sugary thing as well.
Yeah, that's great. How early did you introduce vegetables to him? Because what I've learned from some experts is that part of the problem of kids not eating vegetables is because parents don't feed the kids vegetables, or they'll feed it to them once and they'll turn their head and they're like, oh, well, Johnny doesn't like, broccoli, and then they'll never offer it again.
Yeah, it's difficult, because sometimes you can go to all this effort to make this amazing meal for them and they just throw it on the floor or feed it to the dog, and then you think, well, I'm not going to do that again. But you just have to persevere, and it takes, I think it's about 15 or 20 times for them to accept a new taste, a new flavour. But he's been going to nursery as well since he was probably 9 or 10 months old, and they're brilliant with him there as well. They offer all the children a variety of crudités and fruit platters and really healthy things. So I think that really helps expand their tastes as well, and then they're happy to have it at home too.
Well, if throwing it on the floor, at least the dog is getting healthier, right?
Exactly.
We have to look at it that way.
It's a happy dog.
So what positive impacts do you think that registered dietitians can have on the world of health in general, but in the plant-based community in particular?
I think we play a really important role, because it's not just the health side of things that we can help promote, it's the environmental impact as well. And it's really important to keep up to date with the evidence, because I think sometimes that doesn't happen, and it can be quite rewarding when you read these new studies that have come out, and then you can talk to your colleagues about them, and they may not have read them. You can talk to your patients as well. So I think we play a key role in helping people, and I think people do tend to take nutritional advice from Instagram and from other social media sites, which may not be accurate and will be non-evidence-based. So then we play a really important part in busting those myths, and I love busting a myth, a nutritional myth. Nice. And giving people the right messages.
Well, if you love busting nutritional myths, and I'm going to have to ask you to talk about soy, because so many people are afraid of it, especially if they have cancer in their family, breast cancer, or if they've had it. People are afraid to eat soy.
Yeah, soy is one of those ones where there are so many myths, on various different things. So with cancer, it's completely safe to eat soy, even if you have breast cancer now, or if you've had it in the past, or other types of cancer. And the phytoestrogens in soy attach to different receptors in the breast. So the estrogens in the body attach to the alpha receptors, whereas phytoestrogens attach to the beta receptors. So they have an anti-estrogenic effect. So it can be protective as well. And the earlier it's introduced, the better. So giving it to your daughters when they're babies and as when they're weaning, you know, and throughout their life is going to reduce their risk further, and perfectly safe for boys as well. And I think there's a lot of worry that it causes feminization in men and that you can't give it to, you know, young boy children. And actually that's been shown not to be the case as well. And I think the where that came from was when a man was given 12 servings of soy a day, and it caused you know, change in his hormone levels. But that's a ridiculous amount of soy that no one would ever, you know, recommend that you eat a day. Stick to 2 to 3 servings of soy a day is perfectly safe. And pretty much all the myths out there are just that. When it comes to soya, it's a perfectly safe thing to have in your diet.
Absolutely. Thank you for clarifying that. And they did another study at PCRM where soy helped people reverse symptoms of hot flashes. So it was really helpful for menopausal
yes,
women.
Really beneficial for menopausal women.
Absolutely. You have a quote and I love it. It says, "I think the most surprising thing is how diverse the plant-based diet is. There are so many different meals you can make out of plants." I love that.
It's so true.
I mean, yeah, you know, when people think like there's no variety in a plant-based diet, I'm like, there's no variety in an animal-based diet. There's like, what do you eat? Like 3 or 4 different animals. There's like thousands of legumes and fruits and vegetables. I think it's way more variety, if you ask me.
So much more variety, and so many lovely spices and herbs and, you know, things that you can add to your food as well to give it extra flavor, and pack in those antioxidants as well. Turmeric's one of my favorite things. I have it pretty much in everything. I even add it to my porridge. It's one of my favorite combinations, with turmeric and cinnamon and black pepper in your porridge. It's delicious.
Nice. When you say porridge, that could be oatmeal for us, right?
Yeah.
Okay. It just sounds better. It just sounds like it's like more delicious porridge, oatmeal.
Yeah.
It just sounds better. You know, I think we should start calling that here. Are you an avid exerciser?
I love exercising.
What do you do?
So I do about three or 4 sessions of strength training a week, and some HIIT workouts as well. So I always feel better when I've exercised, and I walk the dog too. He's a big dog, so he needs some good walks.
Right. That's great. What do you wish more people knew about fertility and plant-based diets?
I just wish that people knew there was so much that can be done to help. And it really is taking control of your health. And it's so important, because when you're suffering with infertility or subfertility, which is probably a nicer word to use actually than infertility, you do feel like you've lost control of things. You feel that's been taken away from you, especially if you have to then go through treatment and injecting yourself and, you know, having all those effects that come with it. So I just wish people knew that really making those diet and lifestyle changes, managing their stress, trying to get on top of their sleep, moving their body more, you know, all of those things cost nothing and can really help.
You're basically talking about the pillars of lifestyle medicine.
Exactly.
Beautifully said. And so until we can look forward to your book, where can people find you? Do you hang out mostly on different social media platforms if people want to get to know you a little better?
Yeah, so Instagram I'm most active on. So it's Lisa.Simon_RD. I'm on Twitter as well, but I don't really use Twitter very much. And we have Plant-Based Health Online Facebook group as well, which I post weekly in also.
Great. Well, I bet your patients are very lucky to have found you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I just love it. I love helping people to optimize their chances, because I know how much you want to get pregnant when you're struggling, and just seeing their success stories is just why I do my job.
Right. Well, I can see how passionate and compassionate you are about this. And please let me know when the book comes out, and let's have another conversation and talk about the book.
That would be amazing. I absolutely will. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. Please come back tomorrow when we have another amazing health professional from the UK. Take care.